we're ready to install our final piece of subdecking. We've got it patterned and cut. Basically what we'll do for our final install is wiping down the underside of our piece with denatured alcohol. What that's going to do is remove the waxy blush from the epoxy. If we leave the wax on the underside, we're not going to have a very good surface to bond to. So you can end up delaminating. And then we'll mix up clear, unthickened epoxy, and we'll coat all of the wood surfaces that are going to bond together. What that's going to do is the dry wood will soak up that clear epoxy just a little bit, and so when we add our thickened epoxy on top of it, the dry wood won't be sucking all the epoxy out of the wood flour and leaving just wood flour. So that is another thing we do to ensure that we get a good bond. We'll mix up a batch of thickened epoxy and put a pretty thick layer on all those surfaces. That's going to include basically all the deck beams that our piece is going to sit onto, as well as the metal flange that the deck edge rests on. On the starboard outboard edge, we will do epoxy with a bead of 5200 along the outside. So yeah, once we have all our epoxy and our down on our surfaces and our 5200 along the starboard edge, we'll put our piece down and screw it down, and then so that'll bring down everything that's on top of the deck beams. On the outboard edges or the deck edge along the starboard side and the stern, what we'll do is we'll use little shores that we've cut from 2x4s. And we'll shore and wedge between the underside of the cap rail and the deck edge. And that'll force the edge of our subdecking down into the epoxy and 5200 that we've laid down. We've got our pieces, we've got our piece of subdeck screwed down now onto all the beams. So now we're going around the outside and shoring and wedging the edge down into the bed of epoxy that we made. So basically we've cut a few dozen of these little 2x4 shores, and so just find one that is an approximate fit that I can get in there. And if it's tight to begin with, that's good. And then take a little wedge that we also cut off of 2x4s. We use a nice soft wood so that if something gets crushed, it's going to be the wedge, not our plywood subdecking. So what we're looking to see is that 5200 getting squirted out along the deck edge, and we should see it squirting out everywhere. If there's a spot that it's not squirting out, that means that spot's probably too high. There's still a gap there, so we need to wedge down further. Just go along and shore and wedge every 6 to 8 inches or so, and make sure that we've got a uniform line of 5200 squirting out along the side, and we can be pretty confident that we're down all the way.